The mailbox was mangled, twisted like a soda can under a truck tire. And that's when I knew this wasn't just another Tuesday in Meadowview Estates. Mrs. Callahan, the HOA's self-appointed sheriff, stood over it, her yellow vest glowing like a warning sign, screaming about community standards while my Uncle Ray, calm, silver-haired, and sharp as a tack, stood there in cuffs. The guy who'd put away mob bosses was now being lectured about mailbox height by a woman who'd never held a gavel. Let me back up. I'm Jake, 29, a graphic designer who moved to Meadowview to be closer to family. Meadowview is one of those cookie-cutter suburbs, manicured lawns, identical houses, and an HOA that acts like it's the FBI, CIA, and your mom all rolled into one. Uncle Ray, my mom's older brother, lives 2 streets over. He's 67, the city's chief prosecutor, and the kind of guy who'd rather mow his lawn in a 3-piece suit than wear sweatpants. He's not just family, he's the guy who taught me how to tie a tie and to argue my way out of a speeding ticket. The man's a legend, but to the Meadowview HOA, he was just Lot 47 non-compliant. It started with the mailbox. Ray's was a custom job, sleek, black, with a little eagle emblem, a nod to his old Marine days. It was a half-inch taller than the HOA's approved height. A half-inch? Most folks wouldn't notice, but Mrs. Callahan, the HOA president with a clipboard and a vendetta, had a ruler and a dream. She'd been sending Ray violation notices for weeks, each one more unhinged than the last. Failure to comply may result in fines, liens, or legal action. The last one read, Ray, being Ray, laughed it off, framed the letters, and hung them in his study like trophies. The HOA didn't take kindly to being ignored. Enter Mrs. Callahan's new muscle, Gary, a retired mall cop who dubbed himself the HOA enforcer. Gary was 5'6" of pure ego, strutting around in a vest with HOA in block letters, a flashlight clipped to his belt like he was auditioning for Law & Order. He'd knock on doors, issue warnings for untrimmed hedges, and once fined a kid for leaving a skateboard in the driveway. The neighborhood whispered about him like he was a cartoon villain, but nobody pushed back. Until Ray. The conflict kicked off when Gary showed up at Ray's place with a tow truck, claiming the HOA had the right to confiscate his mailbox for aesthetic non-compliance. Ray, sipping coffee in his suit, told Gary to get off his property or he'd sue him into next week. Gary, red-faced and puffing, called Mrs. Callahan for backup. She arrived with her clipboard, a megaphone, and a mission to make an example out of Ray. This is about community pride, she bellowed, as if a mailbox was the hill to die on. Things escalated fast. Gary, emboldened by Mrs. Callahan's presence, pulled out a pair of dollar store handcuffs and declared Ray was under HOA arrest for obstructing community regulations. I was pulling into Ray's driveway when I saw it. My uncle, the guy who'd stared down cartel lawyers, cuffed like a common crook. Neighbors started spilling out of their houses, phones out, filming the absurdity. Mrs. Callahan was in her element, waving her clipboard like a scepter, shouting about rules being rules. Gary, meanwhile, was trying to drag Ray toward his golf cart, which he'd painted to look like a cop car. It was like watching a bad sitcom, except it was real, and it was my uncle. Then came the twist nobody saw coming. As Gary fumbled with his fake cop routine, a sleek black SUV rolled up, lights flashing. Out stepped Maria Delgado, Ray's protege and the city's deputy DA. She'd been at Ray's for dinner, heard the commotion, and decided to intervene. Maria's 5'2", but she's got a presence that could silence a courtroom. Gary, she said, voice like ice, you're detaining the chief prosecutor of this city. You sure you want to play this game? The crowd gasped. Mrs. Callahan's megaphone dropped an inch. Gary froze, his flashlight shaking in his hand. The standoff was electric. Ray, still cuffed, stood tall, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to Gary's sweating panic. Maria pulled out her phone, dialed the police chief, and put him on speaker. "Chief, we've got an HOA wannabe cop holding Ray in cuffs over a mailbox. You want to weigh in?" The chief's voice boomed through the phone, promising real cops were on the way. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some yelling at Mrs. Callahan, who was now backpedaling, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. The climax hit when the real police arrived. 2 squad cars pulled up, lights blazing, and the officers didn't even try to hide their laughter. They uncuffed Ray, who dusted off his suit and picked up his spilled briefcase like nothing happened. Gary, meanwhile, was stammering excuses as the cops questioned him about unlawful detainment. Mrs. Callahan tried to slip away, but the neighbors weren't having it. They formed a semicircle, phones still rolling, chanting, "No more HOA." Someone nobody knows who tipped over the infamous mailbox, leaving it crumpled in the street like a symbol of the HOA's overreach. The fallout was swift and brutal. By morning, the videos had gone viral on X, racking up millions of views. HOA cop cuffs wrong guy trended for days. Local news picked it up, with headlines like "Suburban Tyranny, HOA oversteps its bounds." Ray, ever the class act, didn't press charges, but he did file a civil suit against the HOA for harassment. Maria, meanwhile, launched an investigation into the HOA's finances, uncovering a trail of questionable fines and enforcement fees that had been fleecing residents for years. The public was livid. X posts flooded with stories of HOA abuses from across the country, sparking a national conversation about overzealous community boards. Mrs. Callahan resigned in disgrace, her clipboard nowhere to be found. Gary moved out of Meadowview, his golf cart repoed after he couldn't pay his own fines. The HOA was dissolved after a neighborhood vote, replaced by a loose council that promised to focus on potlucks, not power trips. Ray, he got a new mailbox, same eagle, same height, just to mess with anyone who dared complain. The real kicker: at the next city council meeting, Ray proposed a new ordinance limiting HOA powers, and it passed unanimously. He stood at the podium, his voice steady but laced with fire. Nobody should feel like a prisoner in their own home. The room erupted in applause. I've never been prouder to call him family. What do you think? Have you ever dealt with an HOA gone wild? Drop your stories below. Let's keep this conversation going.